How's it going, world? It's your boy Jamie the Motivator. We're here again on another episode of the Too Crowded Podcast. I'm here with another special guest, Natalia. She's a medical professional, doctor, and entrepreneur. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So if you don't know who she is, buckle up and take your notes.
So I go by, everyone knows me as Dr. Canary.
Dr. Canary.
Yeah, so I go by
absolutely.
Dr. Canary on social media because they're like, Natalia, who's that?
Absolutely. So tell the world if they don't already know who you are and what you do specifically, because I'm interested to be educated today.
Yes, absolutely. So hey guys, my name is Dr. Canary. I'm a psychiatrist as well as a certified sex therapist and founder of Mind Body Sex, where I incorporate sexual health and mental health. I help couples revitalize their sex life. I deal with victims or survivors, I like to call them, that have dealt with any sort of trauma. Karma Sutra, I do it all. Anything pertaining to sexual health, sex, libido, and then mental health. I work with serial killers and murderers for a pharmaceutical company, and I pretty much help them figure out what medications work well for them.
Absolutely. So how did you get into this space?
Which space?
This space of being a mind body.
Mind body sex?
Yes.
So I was actually a sex therapist before I became a doctor, but I was really young at the time, had no clue like what I wanted to do. And I mean, at 20, 21, when you're getting a master's, like, what do you really know about human sexuality, sensuality? You know, as a woman, you're still learning yourself, learning your body, what pleases you, what you like. So I was like, how am I going to teach somebody about sex? And I barely know about sex myself. You know, I know the books, but not in practice.
Correct.
Sort of thing. So I was working at as a psychiatric tech, and a lot of the children that I was working with, there were young black males, and they told me they had never seen a black psychiatrist. And I was like, this is interesting. We have these Asian and Caucasian males making decisions for black males and not understanding our culture and where we come from. So that motivated me to go to medical school, and I went. And now I just combine my two passions. So I give back a lot to the youth. I do a lot with like colleges and middle schools where I go in and I speak to them about sex.
Correct.
And then I also work with adults and help them revitalize their sex life and have fun in their sex life. So I have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, so that's an interesting dynamic, because I know sex is always so taboo.
Right.
You know, and we still kind of like something like sex. You know, it's not like something we talk
But everybody's
about.
having sex. That's the
Yeah,
crazy
but
thing.
nobody ever talks about it on the public front, on like the upside to it and how to like really gain it. So what are some of the things that you do for couples to help them revitalize their sex?
Gosh, there's a lot. It just really depends like where they're at. Like if they're a new couple, or for me, most of the couples I deal with, they've been married or together for like 10 plus years. And so in that case, you know, they feel like they've done everything underneath the sun. So then we go back to the basics. So it's like, do you listen to music while you're having sex? Have you had sex in other places besides the bedroom, like on the beach, in the bathroom, in the laundry room, like somewhere totally different? And sometimes we even have to get couples to schedule sex, because if you're two entrepreneurs or two doctors or just two very busy individuals, you literally have to make time for sex. And it is a primary need for most men and women. Like it's a need. That's what they want.
So how healthy is sex? Like, I know it's a
There's
health
so
to
many
it.
benefits, like cardiovascular benefits, mental health benefits. Sexual health and mental health are like tied together. So if you're having good sex and your mental health is good, you're going to have an amazing outcome on either end. High cholesterol, like it also helps with high blood pressure, like all of those things, even the prostate health for men. Like there's just so many benefits to like having good sex, because there's a such thing as like having bad sex, as we all know. And I mean also on like a spiritual connection level as well, as far as like energy.
Absolutely. So what are some of the bad energies that goes into like bad sex?
I think people fail to realize, like, if you're having sex with an individual and their mental health isn't stable or where they need it to be, or they have a lot of like bad energy or demons that they're facing, a lot of that transfers into you. Like this person is entering you. And so that is a transfer of energy. And so a lot of times I've had clients that say, you know what? I have this partner and like sex with them is draining. Like I don't feel energized after I have sex. And that's that bad energy transferring over to you. So people fail to realize like sex can actually it has a lot to do with on a spiritual level as well. And that's kind of getting into like the holistic
Correct.
of sex. But yeah, so I always tell people, be mindful of who you're having sex with as well.
Okay, so that's on the side as far as couples. Where do you start off with like the youth? Like, because I know at what age should we start talking to kids about sex?
Honestly, with sexual health, and not so much just sex itself, like pertaining to penetration, but I feel like as young as a child, as 3 years old, like meaning you letting them know, like, hey, bad touch and good touch. Because I realize in the Black community, when I deal with kids, unfortunately, that like have been touched, molested, things like that, they don't know the they don't know the proper vernacular of their genitals. Like they're calling it a purse and different things like that.
And,
Yeah. And so I always tell, and I know that's really prevalent in the Black community. So I always tell parents, like, make sure kids know the proper anatomy, because when this goes to court, sometimes it'll get thrown out because they don't know the judge, and they feel like, they don't know what they're talking about. And so one, I tell, as young as 3, when they're starting to learn words, they should know the correct parts of their genitals. And then you want to teach them good touch and bad touch. And you want to teach them that nobody should be touching down there. And then as they get older, honestly, I have middle schoolers that are like giving fellatio. So these kids are learning about sex, whether it's from rap, from music, from HBO. Parents aren't really censoring what these kids are watching. So they're learning sex from anywhere. So as soon as you feel like your child is being exposed to it, you need to have that conversation. If that's as young as 10, then you need to say, hey, listen, what do you know about sex? And of course, it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but would you rather them learn it from you, or would you rather them learn it from friends and have the totally wrong information?
Yeah, because honestly, I do a lot of mentoring and coaching, and when I go into the middle schools, they'll say like 10, 11-year-olds are already having sex, and they're already like they get caught like every school year.
Yes.
Like fellatio and all that, like in the
because they're curious.
School, yeah.
They're curious. They're very curious, and they've probably had no one to talk to them about it. And like my mom, she used to explain to me, she would say, yes, you're going to be interested in sex, but you have to remember too, there's also this emotional level that you're not going to be able to handle, right? Because at 12, you're thinking like, oh, this is going to be my husband.
Correct.
And I mean, rarely does that ever happen.
Yeah, 90% of the time it doesn't.
Exactly.
So since you looking at it from that standpoint, like how have you been able to like now look at life in a way where it's not from the doctor side, but be able to still, understand like when you get around kids, like?
I think it's easy for me. I love working with kids, and I do children and adolescent psych as well. So I do get to work with kids a lot. But I have a young brother. I have a brother that's like 16. So it's a huge age difference. So he kind of keeps me like in the scope of like what's going on and what kids are talking about. And then the teenagers that I counsel, because they can't be as open with their parents, whether it's for religious reasons or cultural reasons, or they feel like their parents don't understand, they're very open with me. And they'll be like, Dr. Canary, this kid said this, like, what does this mean? And, oh, this is going on at school. Or I saw that video with Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B, what's WAP? And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. Like, I'm not even a parent. So I think that definitely helps me, because it keeps me on my toes, and it helps me also for research purposes to be able to look up and see what's going on.
Nah, that's amazing, because I think, like growing up, if we could have had that access, to have those conversations, I don't think a lot of people would be able to like get so many, because obviously from your research in your industry, that does the statistics show that you all like help with less teen pregnancies and less exposure to STDs and things like that?
That's why it's crazy to me. I don't know about other states, but like when I was growing up, we had sex education starting in middle school, and a lot of states have gotten rid of it. I know Georgia doesn't really even have a program.
They show us like in elementary school, and we take a trip to like the farm bank, and they show us the anatomy of the body, but that's it. They didn't really do nothing else.
No, we had like actual like penis, vagina, everything. Like it was actually very detailed. Like we had books about it. And I went to like 4 different high schools, and I remember each of them had some sort of curriculum, but they've pretty much done away with that. But it does. Stats show that if your child receives courses in sex education, that it decreases teen pregnancy, it decreases HIV, it decreases STIs, STDs. But for some reasons, people feel like it's not important. They don't want to give money towards it as far as like the government standpoint. And I think parents are just ashamed to talk to their kids about it. But there's books, there's DVDs. You can have your counselor, your therapist talk to your kids about it. So there's other options if you are, nervous or scared to talk to your kids about it.
Wow, that's amazing. So as a professional, like what's some of the things that you intend to do in the near future as far as this space?
Oh, I'm just getting started. So my business is only 2 years old, so it's a
Well,
baby.
congratulations on that still.
Thank you. The struggle has been real.
Started right before the pandemic or during the pandemic?
Right before the pandemic, but I really started like working on it diligently during the pandemic. So I had created it before the pandemic, but I wasn't really working on it because I was so busy with my 9 to 5.
Correct.
And then once the pandemic happened, I was still working at the hospital, but I was like, you know what? Everybody's sitting at home. Let me start making content and videos about dating, about love, about sexual health, mental health. So that's kind of where it took off. So I'm still at the beginning stages. There's a lot that I still want to do. As far as like just branding wise and collaborating with
Like
more
courses,
companies.
books,
I
curriculum,
do, yes.
things like that?
I have an ebook out called My Mind, My Body. It's for the ladies. And it pretty much talks about everything from mental health to how to be a dominatrix in the bedroom to pleasing yourself, pleasing your man, but most importantly, taking care of yourself from the inside out. So I have an ebook on that. I want to start doing courses. I did my first event, what was it, maybe like a month ago now? So that was a lot of fun. So I want to travel and do that because I travel all the time. So I've been to like 35 countries. So I definitely want to do like some traveling and mental health, sexual health courses overseas.
Wow. So what's been some of your greatest successes, like since being into this field? Because I'm sure so many doors open up for you. What's been some major successes you experiences and some greatest failures that's been on this journey? Because I honestly think like you're a trendsetter. Like this is a new industry. I feel like in a way where it's not, because before hearing what you do, like I've heard about it on social media, but I never met anybody or knew like in
it's not a lot
contact.
of us.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of psychiatrists and sex therapists, but it's rarely any like black women that are sex therapists. Like I know maybe one or two other in Atlanta, but they're not doctors. But they're dope. So people love talking about it. That's the thing. But it's like, let's talk about it in a manner where we're educating people, because everyone likes to talk about just how it's done. Correct. But you have to break it up into different components, I feel like, when you're talking about sex. But as far as my successes, I've had some major collaborations with like KY, with B Condoms, which is a black-owned condom company.
Are they out of Atlanta?
Yep, they're out of Atlanta. Yeah, they're black-owned by the guy named Jason.
Yeah, I think I met him before.
Yeah, his condoms are in Target and Walmart. Really, really dope. Who else have I? Target. I work with Target now, so that's really dope. I did a little mini series on HBO, so that was like amazing. As far as failures, I've had a lot. Too many to name. Because like I didn't know really the business aspect.
Correct.
In medical school, you don't really learn about finances and business and how to like run your own clinic or your own office. So I really had to like learn all that on my own, like fall flat on my face before I perfected it. So yeah.
So how do you continuously like get that knowledge? Do you have like mentors and stuff that's kind of like help you in this space?
I have a lot of mentors. Yes.
Okay, and what are some of the things that they, that you can talk about that they, educating you on that may inspire some other people that want to come into this space?
Definitely, I feel like if you want to come into this space, I feel like the most important thing to do is like one, to find like what your niche is and what your audience is. But don't be like closed-minded to the point where you feel like, you know what, I can't help geriatrics with sex, or I can't do this. Like be open-minded that you can really help everybody. Like find a problem and then try and solve that problem. That was like the number one thing they told me to do. It was like whenever you're creating content or you're speaking about something, try and find whatever problem is in that area and then solve that problem, because people are looking for solutions.
Yeah, so I think on the surface, when we hear like about sex education doctors, I think people automatically think that the person who's having a lot of sex or real promiscuous, that may be a qualified person to teach it.
Right.
Dispel that myth or fact.
Well, I will say that, you can learn from everybody, because honestly, like there was like this whole movement one time, like when strippers were teaching classes to like married women and moms and
like seductive classes.
Yeah, like seductive classes, and they was making a lot of money from it, because think about it, like men go to strip clubs and they like the visual, they like what they see. And if they're at home and they're like, oh, my wife is born, that's a great way to spice up your sex life, right? Or just in general, spice, intimacy, whatever. So I feel like you can learn from anybody. You can learn from a prostitute. Everybody has a story. Everybody has something to teach you. So I feel like at the end of the day, take what you can from people and then put your own spin on it.
Wow. So is this like where you have to go to college?
Oh yeah,
to get this,
yeah. You have,
yeah.
There's a lot of schooling, yeah. For medical school,
because I know sometimes you can do colleges or certifications, but
to be a certified sex therapist, you have to go to school. You have to have a master's, at least the bare minimum. Another sex coaches where they have like certifications and stuff like that. I don't know much about that, but like to be a sex therapist, you have to have 4 years of a bachelor's, 2 years of a master's. There's hours that you have to do behind another sex therapist. So it is quite a bit of schooling. And then to be a doctor, it's even more schooling.
Wow.
But it's worth it. It's definitely worth it because you have something to fall back on.
Wow. So we're in the theme of too crowded, so what do you do to make yourself stand out?
Well, luckily for me, one, it's not a lot of Black female psychiatrists in the world in general, but in Atlanta, it's only like maybe 1% here. So, I mean, my business is always booming, whereas sometimes I even have to turn people down, unfortunately. And then for sex therapy, it's the same thing. Like people are curious about it. People want to know what it is. It's not a lot of Black female sex therapists here in Atlanta. It's not a lot of sex therapists in general here in Atlanta, but especially not Black women. So it's not crowded in my space. I wish more women would get into this space, or men would get into this space. But even if it was crowded, I feel like I'm unique in general because of my personality and how I always come with research. Okay. And that's one thing about me. And I'm always going to make sure that I feel like I can help everybody in the room.
Absolutely. So how do you balance this lifestyle? Like, because I know for me as an entrepreneur, I don't have so many different careers, but I know you're juggling between, a handful. So how do you keep yourself mentally balanced?
That's difficult. When I'm handling other people's mental health, it is sometimes very difficult to keep my own mental health intact. Yeah. Because I deal with one of my jobs, like I said, I deal with murderers and killers, serial killers. So it is a very specialized type of therapy. And so what I've learned to do is like take breaks. Like usually when I'm off work, I don't socialize for like at least an hour or two. I'm not really on social media like that unless it's for business.
Correct.
Content purposes, that's really it. I try and stay, because social media can be negative, but you also can change your feed too. So a lot of my feed is like travel and food, which is two things that I love. So you also have to be careful what you're feeding yourself at the end of the day, what you're feeding your mind.
Yeah, because, I know a lot of it, like, you taking on so much.
Right, right.
Like,
so why would I want to, so I definitely make sure that I eliminate distraction. And then I think loved ones, like I'm very close to my family, and then I travel. So like I have a very blessed life. Like I'm very happy with what I do because I make sure that I keep my positivity, vibrations, energy always high, and the people I have around me are the same way. So that helps.
All right, so that brings me to what is affirmation or quote that you live by that may inspire others. Mine would be I always stand for life is movement. If you stop, you die. Choose life. And then what that means for me is just always find a constant way of moving forward, whether it's business, family, faith, but always trying to move forward with it. Like never get comfortable in that space, because a lot of times you can reach the level of success and you get complacent to think, I got it on lock. But you never really have any space on lock because you always have to continuously pour into it. You have to continuously move forward in that aspect.
That's a good one. I should have looked up quotes before I came.
Well, just the affirmation you say to yourself in the mirror. I know.
You know what? I have a lot of affirmations, but I usually look on Pinterest. I think a quote, my mom actually gave me this quote. It was, and I might be saying it incorrectly, so I might have to give you the quote later for you to put it at the bottom. But it's hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I believe is how it said.
Yeah, that's exactly how you said.
And pretty much what that means is like, when I was in medical school, I felt like I wasn't going to make it, right? Because I was like, it was only like 3 Black girls in my entire medical school. It was just the 3 of us. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm smart enough to like make it through medical school. I was like, this is really strenuous. And my mom was like, you know what? You see everybody else, you're comparing yourself because you feel like they don't have to study as hard. But she was like, if you keep studying hard, you're going to make it through. And I realized anything in life, you can be very talented, but if you do not work hard towards whatever your passion or your talent is, you're not going to be as successful as the next person. Because if that person is working their butt off and they want it just as bad as you, and they might not be as talented, but they're working at their craft every single day, in the long run, they're going to beat you.
Yeah, and I just piggyback off that. Like, we never know when life is going to hit us.
Right.
So if you're taking advantage of always working hard, plus with your talent,
yes,
when life hits you, because you've been working so hard, you can kind of move past that,
right?
Kind of prepare yourself through.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, all right. So how can the world find you, and then what's next that you may want to introduce to them?
So if you're interested in just my content, I do a lot of content based off of relationships, sex, mental health, sexual health. You can find me at my business page, mind.body.sex. If you're interested more in my personal life, where I showcase traveling, I'm into MMA and firearms, then you can follow me at Dr.Canary, Canary. And what was the other question?
What's something you may want to announce to them that you have coming up?
Actually, nothing.
So just follow and stay connected.
Yeah, just follow my Instagram. I honestly can't think. I have some projects in the work, but I can't speak on them just yet. Unless you're in Chicago, I don't know if this will be ready in 2 weeks. But I am hosting an event with coffee, mental health, and hip hop in Chicago area on November 20th. So if you're in Chicago, come out and join. I'm going to be talking about struggle love.
All right, that's good. Mm-hmm. All right, well, this has been another episode of Too Crowded Podcast, and as always, I meet you at the top because the bottom is too crowded.